What's going on, guys? Welcome to the very first video of Heading West in collaboration with Connor Cavazos, the CEO and founder of the Crypto Crow's Nest. And we have a pleasurable guest today. His name is Kento Inami, the CEO and founder of UXD Protocol.
Hey guys.
So kind of getting into it. This is Kento, this is Connor. But yeah, kind of diving in, I'd love to learn a little bit about your background, Kento, where you're from, and kind of ultimately like what got you into crypto.
Yeah, so my name's Kento. I'm Japanese. I was actually born in Netherlands, but I lived mostly in Japan and have lived a little bit in the US for a bit. But my background is, so I started UXD in mid 2020. And before that, I was working at a cryptocurrency exchange called Bitflyer in Japan. And I started working there since 2017. And before that, I was working at a bank in Japan, and I traded derivatives there. And I started in crypto in 2017, mid 2017. And I started like as many people did. Like I read the Bitcoin white paper, and I became hooked. Like I realized that you can actually create digital currency that's decentralized, and it actually works. And then I became like really interested, and I just decided to go full time in crypto, and started to work at the cryptocurrency exchange.
Awesome. And I see you guys are backed by Alameda, Multicoin. What was that process like? Did they find you or did you go to them?
Yeah, so Multicoin led our seed round, and how it came to that was, so back then, I it was just like a white paper in a deck. And I sent it to Solana Foundation because they were like giving out grants back then. And I applied for a grant for creating the UXD stablecoin. And then the guy, it's called Ben, but he used to work at Multicoin. The guy who at Solana Foundation, who was in charge of like investments, and he introed me to Multicoin. And then Multicoin, since Multicoin, like Kyle and Tushar like came up with the idea themselves like a long time ago too. Like they also had this idea of a delta neutral backed stablecoin. And so like they understood, like I wrote this white paper, but they understood it instantly because they thought about it before. And yeah, and then like they said they'll lead, and then they introduced me to other investors, including Alameda.
No, that's super neat. And then kind of diving into a little bit about your leadership style, I'd love to see, how that has kind of helped UXD Protocol and kind of what is your style and how has that kind of helped your team succeed in growing the
Yeah, like
protocol?
I try like I don't know if it's like a leadership style, but I try to hire people who like I think are smarter than I am. So like especially people who are like very into crypto. So interviews I would like, especially if they're for like strategy, they I would ask them like pretty like difficult questions in crypto, and it's relatively easy for me to gauge their like level in crypto. So one of the things that I do in terms of strategy is for like the business side, I try to hire people who like are very smart, and then for like technical roles, like our CTO is very technically competent, and he knows a lot of people from back when he was working in other companies, and so a lot of people have been kind of recruited, uh, people that he knows. So that's kind of like how the team was formed. And as for like leadership skills, like I try to like take everyone's opinion into account. And if there's like if it's close where it's very split on whether to do something or not, then I try to involve the community. But then sometimes even then it's still close, in which case we kind of just wait, don't do it. Um, but most of the time there's like a consensus on what to do, I would say.
No, that's super interesting. Some great insight there, especially for people who are looking to build teams and even, build out their own crypto protocols. And then kind of in regards for the audience, how would you kind of describe UXD at like a foundational level for anyone who's never heard of the protocol?
So UXD it's a stable coin, it's a decentralized stable coin on Solana. And the way about stable coins, it's always about how it stabilizes its price. And the way UXC does it is kind of unique in that it creates a delta neutral position on a derivative DEX to back the stablecoin. Now, what a delta neutral position is in a very simple way of explaining it is like a long spot position and a short perpetual futures position. So if you're long one SOL and you're short one SOL perpetual futures, the price going to going down 90% or going up by 500% has no effect on P&L, right? Your P&L is always zero because if it goes up, you make money on the spot position, but you lose money on the perpetuals. When it goes down, it's the other way around. But the gains and the losses always like cancels each other out. And so that's basically when you always have a P&L of zero, that's basically what a stable coin is. And basically that position backs the stable coin. That's like how it works.
So would love to hear kind of why you chose to build on Solana over AVAX, for example, and other layer ones.
Right. So for UXD, composability is very important. So composability is basically like the ease in which apps can communicate with each other and integrate with each other. And since Solana has this philosophy of scaling on chain, there's no situation where like a certain app is on L1 and another app is on L2, right? Because then, or situation where an app is on like let's say Optimism, and then another app is on Arbitrum, for example.
Arbitrum.
Yeah, it's hard for these two apps to communicate, right? But on Solana, it's all on Solana, like it's just on the one layer one. And for UXD, well, we integrate with Mango markets, but it's really important that we can, when someone mints UXD, there's an atomic transaction that occurs on Mango to short the perpetual futures, and it has to be done in one atomic transaction. The price has to be within a certain range. Like all of this has to be done, and it's you can only do it on when the apps are very composable, and so that's one of the reasons why we decided to build on Solana.
So beyond Solana, things like subnets on Avalanche or parachains on Polkadot, what made you choose, or what advantages, I guess, does Solana have over those systems? And how has that helped UXD grow?
I think it's composability. So for parachains or for subnets, they're basically like different zones, right? And these zones are kind of like separate. And so it's there is some interoperability between these zones, but it's more difficult, right? So theoretically, if there's like a derivative DEX on one subnet, and we're also on the same subnet, then you can create this delta neutral position. But I do think it's a little bit more difficult, and also you have the issue of scalability, because the scalability of one subnet is limited by its by the chain's kind of technical capabilities, right? So it's that's like we think that Solana has a better scaling solution in that sense, and we decided to go on Solana.
And I saw that you guys, in another interview, you said that you were researching other chains, and you talked about bringing UXD to Ethereum, but you said it would have to be native in order for that to work. How would that work?
So actually, we've been working on this for some time. And actually, so I can talk about this already because we kind of like tweeted a teaser a little while ago, but it's going to be Optimism. We're gonna release it on DevNet, and the way it works is there's a derivative DEX on Optimism called Perpetual Protocols, and they recently started to accept multi-collateral. They started to accept ETH as collateral, and so we can now create the delta neutral position using ETH as collateral on Optimism and integrating with Perpetual Protocols. And so we can then now create it natively on Optimism.
So how would governance work in that situation then? If it's split between chains?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it goes down. It comes back to a question, or like there's another question related to this, which is, well, are you guys going to have a governance token on Optimism to govern the protocol on Optimism, or is there going to be like one governance token that's going to govern all these chains? And we don't yet have like an answer to that. Like we're first concentrating on creating the stablecoin natively on Optimism, and then thinking of how to create a governance token around that later on to kind of like tie it in.
Yeah, real quick, Hunter. Yeah, because I think with Luna and with UST and everything that happened there, I think a major issue with why it all came crashing down was the lack of liquidity on other chains. Do you foresee that being an issue, and if you do, how do you mitigate that problem, the lack of liquidity on those other chains?
So the stability of the stablecoin doesn't really have to do with the governance token, because the governance token doesn't really you can change parameters for the stablecoin. Well, actually, you can vote on which derivative DEX to integrate with, for example. The governance token is like the final backstop of when the insurance fund runs out. But like in terms of like the stability of the stablecoin, it doesn't really have to do with it. And so you don't really have the situation where like in Luna, where the Luna token is like the kind of like the backstop for UST, because it mints more more Luna when someone redeems their UST, it mints more Luna, right? Whereas with the governance token for UXP, it doesn't. There's no mechanism like that. So liquidity of the governance token doesn't really have to do with the stablecoin, actually.
No, that's some solid insight. Thank you, Kento. And then I'm also curious too, how do you kind of see the stablecoin market evolving over the next few years? And then what are your thoughts on USDC kind of becoming a household name?
Yeah, so I think, like, starting from the conclusion, I think like there's going to be two types, like centralized stablecoins and then decentralized stablecoins. And centralized stablecoins, they're already like, there's already like a process or a well thought out way of doing it. You just try to be regulated as much as possible. You try to get licenses in most of these like states. You establish good banking relationships. Basically, Circle, right? Circle is doing, I think, a better job than Tether in the execution of a centralized stablecoin. And I think it's going to be Circle, right? Like their execution strategy is going to work. So I think for centralized stablecoins, we can already see what's going to happen, or like I don't really see like a huge change in centralized stablecoins. On the other hand, decentralized stablecoins, there's like various models, and no one yet knows what exactly is the right approach. So there's like the DAI model, where it's partially backed by USDC and then by ETH. There's like stablecoins like LUSD, which is only backed by ETH, but same over collateralization method like DAI. And then there's like UXD, which is like a delta neutral stablecoin. And then there's Frax, which is like Frax is like it's backed by USDC, but like it's like 5%, 10% like the governance token, and then like 90% USDC. I think that's like the majority of the stablecoins that are out there right now, I think, in terms of like the model. And what I expect is in the future, it's going to merge. So there's going to be like several ways to maintain the peg for decentralized stablecoin. And like the winner takes all decentralized stablecoin is going to adopt like several of these things. So it's not just going to be one thing, but it's going to be several. And I think there's going to be like this concentration in what the ideal decentralized stablecoin is going to be, although we don't know exactly what it is yet. But I think we're still in like the experimentation stage. But I do think there's going to be like an end game in that sense.
And so do you see regulation as a propelling component for decentralized stablecoins, and specifically UXD, or a negative component, or is that going to weed out kind of decentralized stablecoins from maybe ones that claim they're decentralized but are not?
Yeah, I think it's a nuanced answer, because it also depends on how hard regulators clamp down on stablecoins. So if they Well, the way they're gonna, I think, regulate stablecoins is, well, first they regulate, like they make rules more strict for like stablecoins like USDC, and then USDC, they will then take actions that makes it more difficult for decentralized stablecoins that rely on USDC to operate. So it depends on how hard they come down on. If they come down hard, like stablecoins like DAI, since they're partially collateralized by USDC, if Circle blacklists the DAI's USDC, it essentially just becomes under collateralized. So I mean, I don't really think that's what's going to happen. But if they do go that far, then like a lot of these decentralized stablecoins will die out. I think long term, what you should do as a stablecoin is try to not rely on USDC as much as possible. Otherwise, like you kind of have to ask the question, like, well, why not just use USDC instead?
And so moving forward, how do you see, because I saw in one of your other interviews it was in the Breakpoint 21, where you discussed settling Mango futures in potentially UXD. Is that still your guys' goal? Because right now it's, for the audience, it's settled in USDC. Is that still your guys' goal?
Yeah, we would like to do that. Obviously, I think it's going to take some time. But like we would definitely like to do that. Like get UXD as the settlement currency for Mango.
And then in regards to depegging, I was curious watching another one of your interviews, doing some research. So I guess Mango Markets, as you stated, I believe, have a $70 million insurance fund. I was curious if that has increased or decreased at all with kind of the current market situation. And then have you guys kind of found a kind of workaround rather than like relying on that?
Yeah, I think Mango changed. I think they might have lost like a few hundred K, something like that. It was on like a dashboard. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what the number was. I think it was like a few hundred K. So it's like basically nothing. As for the insurance fund on Mango, so the insurance fund on Mango is there so that when there's a situation where the traders with a negative P&L cannot pay their negative P&L because they're leveraged too much and the price goes down or up too goes down or up too quickly, and and then they get liquidated, but the liquidation doesn't happen as quickly enough, and then there's like this like negative equity that has to be paid out from the insurance fund so that the positive side gets paid out. And it's a necessary thing for most of the dexes. And so I wouldn't say that we're kind of relying on them, but it's like a safety mechanism, and it's better to have it than not to have it, for sure.
Definitely. No, that makes sense.
How do you think, in kind of light of what you just said, and obviously the past month with UST blowing up after, $20 billion of value just destroyed, how do you see UXD building confidence for users? And are there any indicators that you foresee that would, kind of signal UXD as like a permanently established in the market?
So what we look at is obviously like the price, right? So for the last so we started in January this year, basically in a bear market, and we've been looking at the peg on how well it's kept its peg and the arbitrage mechanism behind it. So what happens for UXD is that so what basically has happened for the past like 2 months is everyone got out of like algorithmic stablecoins or decentralized stablecoins. They sold it on Curve or Saber, and they exited to USDC. And that has happened for UXD too, right? Like everyone discriminately just sold off all their decentralized stablecoins for USDC. And what happened was the Saber pool will become imbalanced, and UXD would lose its peg a little bit, like go to like 99 cents, 0.995 or something like that. And then what would happen is people would then acquire UXD on Saber, and then they would redeem it for $1 worth of SOL assets, and then they sell the SOL for USDC. And we've seen bots. There are people who are running bots that do this automatically to arb the price, and this has led to keeping its peg. So far, in like this very volatile market condition, we've kept the peg. So at least like current market cap is 30 million. So we're not sure what's going to happen if it goes like 300 million or a billion. But at least for, like technically, we saw that it kind of worked. And then like as for establishment, like I think the length of time it keeps its peg is important, and hopefully I think people will start to trust it much more once we keep its peg for at least a year.
Awesome. And
And then,
sorry, go for it, Hunter.
No worries. If you got another one, feel free.
It's fine.
I was also curious, do you plan to integrate UXD in Solana Pay? As I know that's picking up quite a bit.
Not yet, actually. I mean, we would love to, but like my main focus right now is DeFi. So getting integrated in as many DeFi applications as possible is our biggest priority. I would say we probably have like 50%, maybe like half of the DeFi applications. There's a few left that we want to be integrated with. But once we finish DeFi applications, then we would ideally like to be used as a stablecoin on an NFT marketplace. So you can buy and sell NFTs using UXD will be a next step. And then real world payments through Solana Pay, for example.
So moving forward in regards to what you were saying about DeFi, do you think that do you think that UXD can only grow at the speed that the future exchanges and the liquidity on those exchanges grows?
Yes, we are like constrained by the liquidity of derivative dexes, and this has been one of our scaling issues. So we're like 90% of the open interest on Mango markets, which we're basically like the sole, like the only shorters on Mango markets, right? That has like a short position the entire time, and that has like pushed down negative funding rates very negatively. And so how we think about scaling right now is integrating with more derivative dexes. So we've already started working on that. The next one will probably be 01. So that by integrating with more derivative dexes and also coming up with new ways to stabilize the stablecoin is also another thing that we've been thinking about. So one thing that has been brought up internally was D3M, which MakerDAO actually uses. It's like you lend through a lending protocol. You supply more of the stablecoin in the lending protocol, and you target an interest rate. And it's basically backed by the assets in that lending protocol. So MakerDAO has been doing this with Aave for quite a long time, and we've been thinking about doing it with Solana. But recently, there's been some this large whale that's about to be liquidated on Solana, and we haven't ditched the idea, but we decided to just not pursue it right now. So we're kind of like thinking about how to scale. There's a few other ideas that we have, but they're still like experimental. So yeah, I think next step, like what you could probably see is more integrations and then multi-chain. So optimism is what you can expect the next several months.
And what do you think about Solana's dilemma right now with, I mean, the option seems, right, either self-preservation or, you stick to the decentralization, but
yeah,
like it seems like there's kind of a fork in the road right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, both of the options are not ideal. I mean, I personally lean towards doing the OTC thing that they've issued. So in their governance proposal, they kind of came up with this idea where the price of when the whale becomes close to liquidation, they take over the position and then sell off like 20% or something like that on the OTC market. And I think it's for Solana, that's the way they should do it. Like obviously decentralization is important, but this 100 million, it's very big, and it might leave like such a bad debt. There's no liquidity. There's not much liquidity on DEXs, and so and if they have 20 million in insurance fund. I mean, if they run out of that, they won't be able to survive, and I think they have to make this tough decision, and it's not ideal, but I think they made at least the right proposal.
So moving forward, if UXD succeeds, why did it succeed? And if it fails, why did it fail?
Good question. So I actually had this question before by someone else. I forgot, but so like the way I see it succeed is derivative DEXs succeeding. Like if derivative DEXs are a success in that there's a lot of traction, a lot of people trade on derivative DEXs as they do on spot DEXs, then you'll have a lot of liquidity. There'll be more market makers. There'll be more liquidity. They'll be able to withstand more of our short positions. And so, like, I can see, in a scenario where UXD succeeds as it is, derivative DEXs would definitely be succeeding. And then the way it fails is basically like the opposite of that, right? Where derivative DEXs never take off. There's no volume for it. And we just continue to be like 90% of the open interest, and funding rates just is always negative. That's how I see like UXD failing.
Awesome. I appreciate the insight, Kento. The last question we have, relates to your profile picture. Who would win in a fight? Grandpa Zoldig or Kikyo, the dad of Killa? And for the viewers who aren't familiar, it's Hunter x Hunter, the television show that it relates to.
Kind of a fun one to throw in at the end.
Oh man, I think it's I think it's the dad. I think it's wait a minute. I mean, it's very close actually. It's like just a very difficult question. I think it's the dad. I think it's the dad, not the grandpa. The reason is like, well, I think the grandpa has more experience, but stamina is the dad, and I think the dad is more in his prime time than the grandpa. Let's just say
awesome.
Are you?
There we go. But just gonna want to wrap it up. Say thanks everyone for tuning in to the first video of Heading West. Huge thank you to Kento. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate you coming on. And then I'm gonna leave Kento's information down below. Yeah, thank you again, Kento and Connor for hopping on.
Connor. Thanks for having me.